Salvete discipuli. Hello, sixth grade, and welcome to this week's Latin lesson. Today we are going to be learning some Latin words for different types of food. Now, I focused our Latin words on some of the more common food items that the ancient Romans would have actually eaten. Now, obviously, in ancient Rome, they had different types of food than we do, so we're not going to be learning how to say words like pizza or hamburgers or things like that because they didn't have those back then. So we're going to be focusing on words for types of foods that they actually did eat, which there is some overlap, and then there's going to be a couple of maybe some weird ones that we're going to learn. So then we're going to be using these vocab words to do a project. So that'll be another video where I'll kind of get into the specifics of what the project's going to look like. But basically, you're going to be using our food words to create your own Latin menu. So make sure you check out that video. But for now, let's actually learn our Latin words. So let's get started. All right, so cibus, right? Roman food. Cibus is our Latin word for food. This is one of our vocab words. We'll see this one in just a second. So let's jump right in. First, we're going to be learning the words for the different meals of the day, and then a little bit of information about those meals. Again, remember, practice saying your Latin words out loud. This one's a bit tricky, right? We've got that consonantal I here that's pronounced y. So this is yentaculum, yentaculum. And this is going to be the Roman word for, or the Latin word for breakfast. Now, the Romans didn't really eat much for breakfast. It was a pretty small meal. They might have a little bit of bread, maybe some fruit. So fairly small meal. Not quite this level of elaborate breakfast that we often have here. So simple little meal just to kind of get you started for the day. So yentaculum is going to be breakfast for the ancient Romans, just a little bit of bread and some fruit. Next, we have prandium. Prandium, this is going to be lunch. And again, this was another fairly light meal. Just again, some bread, maybe fruit, maybe I had a little bit of cheese in this meal. So again, keeping things pretty simple. I mean, think of it kind of like a sandwich without the meat in that sort of sense. You've got bread and cheese and fruit. And so fairly light meal here. And then on to cena. So cena is our Latin word for dinner. And my face is blocking the pictures here. Now, cena, dinner, this was their main meal. This was kind of the big event of the day. So this often, for wealthy families, obviously, this would have been a much bigger thing. For poorer families, it wouldn't have quite been so elaborate. But wealthier families would have eaten reclining on couches instead of sitting at a table like we often do today. So in their dining room of wealthier households, they would have typically 3 kind of like long couches that you would recline on sideways, and then slaves would bring the family's food and serve them in that way. There were several courses to the dinner meal. These could get very exotic and elaborate. We'll see some examples of that with our vocabulary later on. And this was often a big social event. So again, wealthier families more so than the poorer families who couldn't really afford it, but wealthy families would usually have guests over for dinner parties, especially if you were in politics or things like that. You would have people over to impress them, so they would vote for you and stuff like that. They did have utensils, although most Romans would eat mostly with their fingers. Slaves would typically cut up the food ahead of time so that you could just easily grab it with your fingers. So that is the Roman dinner. So now we've got the 3 meals of the day. So let's talk about some of the food that would have been at those meals and the Latin words for it. So as I said, cibus is just our general word for food, right? So cibus is food in general, and then we'll get into some of the specifics. Now, quick note, we will, for some of our food vocabulary, be learning both the singular form and the plural form for our food words. Now, our food words are all nouns, so they're all going to have this grammatical gender, either masculine, feminine, or neuter. We're actually going to be learning a few neuter words in this lesson. So exciting. Our neuter words will often end in um in the singular. And if we have the plural version, they're going to end in a lot of the time. So this part is where it gets a little bit tricky because we've usually seen a as our feminine ending, our feminine singular ending. But it can be a neuter plural ending, which is a little confusing, but we'll kind of talk about that when we get to those words. So again, some of the words we will be learning the plural forms, mostly for a few of our fruits, because typically we talk about those fruits in the plural more so than in the singular. So that's why we're going to start seeing a few plural forms in this lesson. So just keep that in mind. All right, our first specific type of food is panis. Panis is going to be our Latin word for bread. In Spanish, it's pan, right? So this is our word for bread. This is a staple, especially for wealthier families. Grain was very common in ancient Rome. Wealthy families would make that grain into bread, and then we'll see what the poorer families would make the grain for. In this word, pulse. Pulse is going to be our Latin word for porridge or kind of oatmeal in that sort of a sense. So poorer families who didn't have ovens, didn't have access to ovens in their houses, would have taken their grains and just mixed them with milk or something to make this sort of simple porridge. Whereas wealthier families who could afford kitchens and had ovens, things like that, had access to that, they would often make it more into bread. All right, so panis is going to be bread, right? Again, mostly for our wealthier families. And then pulse was porridge. So this was very, very common for kind of the everyday folk in ancient Rome. Caseus. Caseus is going to be our Latin word for cheese. Cheese was very common. The Romans made all kinds of different cheeses. So ancient Rome, cheese was a very common part of the meal. Like I said, it was typically eaten with some bread at lunchtime. All right, so cheese, very common. Lac. Lac is our first neuter noun. And this is one of our neuter nouns that doesn't end in um. So starting us off with a trickier neuter noun. Lac is our Latin word for milk. This is related to our word lactose, right? People who are lactose intolerant can't eat dairy products, right? Dairy has lactose in it. So lac is our word for milk. And they did have access to milk. Typically, in ancient Rome, it would have been more like sheep and goat's milk, more so than cows. Cows are much more common in ancient Greece than in ancient Rome. Pomum and poma. So this is our first noun where we're having the singular and the plural. Pomum is a neuter noun, and so we see that ending for our singular and then that a ending for our plural. So pomum and poma is going to be our word for fruit. And in English, we use fruit for singular and for plural. So you can say fruits as well, but we typically just kind of say fruit in general. So this is fruit. These are fruits. So fruit is pomum and poma. Now, there is the word fructus, which can also be used for fruit. If you did the song School Latin in the earlier grades, then you might be more familiar with that form. But this one, I think, is a bit more common than fructus. All right, we have another one. We've got both the singular and the plural, malum and mala, another neuter noun. This is our Latin word for apple or apples. Right? And again, the reason I'm giving you plural here is because typically you'll see this word, right? We talk about fruits in the plurals a lot. So malum or mala. Now, this is a specifically tricky one because we did with our adjectives just learn the adjective malus, mala, meaning bad. This is, again, can be confusing, but our adjective does not have this long A. So this is where sometimes those long marks can be really important. For our apple word, there is going to be that long A. So malum and mala versus malus and mala. It's slightly different pronunciation. All right, and can you remember say uva and uy, right? We've got another singular and plural. This one is a feminine noun though. This is our Latin word for grape, right? Uva is grape and uy is grapes. Uva is grape in Spanish, I believe, as well. And then we have oliva and oliwai, another feminine noun, and another one where we have the singular oliva and the plural oliwai. This is olive or olives, right? Very, very staple food for ancient Greece and ancient Rome. Olives were used for a lot of different things. It was baked into their bread. They used olive oil for a lot of stuff. So olives were a huge part of the ancient diet in the Mediterranean. All right, and then we've got faba and fabai, another feminine, singular faba, plural fabai. This is our Latin word for bean or beans, right? Beans. And then we have ovum and owa. This is a neuter noun. This is our noun that means egg or eggs. This is related to our word oval, right? Eggs are shaped like ovals. So there you go there. So ovum and owa for egg and eggs. All right, on to our next word, sal. We're just getting this in the singular. It's mostly used in the singular. Sal is going to be our Latin word for salt. I'm just missing one letter from that in the Latin to English. Salt was one of the main seasonings. Eventually, it became harder to acquire because when the Roman Empire started falling, they lost kind of access to their salt mines. But salt was very popular, a very popular seasoning used for a lot of stuff. And then we have mel. Mel is a neuter noun. This is our Latin word for honey. And this was the main sweetener. They didn't have sugar like how we typically think of sugar nowadays. So honey was used as a sweetener to sweeten things. So they really liked their honey in ancient Rome. This was used for desserts, for sweetening various sauces and things like that. And then we've got garum. Now, this is very unique to ancient Rome, right? Most of the foods we've seen so far are things that we still eat today. This one is not. Garum is the Latin word for basically a fish sauce. This was a very popular condiment. It was basically as popular as, think of like maybe ketchup or barbecue sauce or whatever your favorite condiment is. That's what the Romans thought of garum. It was made from fish guts and salt that would have been left to ferment in the sun for a period of time. So kind of gross in our minds typically. There's a video on YouTube about how to make garum, and it's basically you take the fish guts and mix it with salt, maybe some other herbs, and then you just let it sit in the sun for like a couple months. And then you strain it, and then the sauce that's left over, they love to put it on everything. It was very, very popular. So this is something that's a little different that the Romans loved, but that maybe might not be so appealing to most people today. And then we have caro. This is a feminine word. This is our general word for meat. So this is kind of a very general term for meat. This is related, I believe, to like carne in Spanish. So if you go to a Mexican restaurant, you might see like carne asada. Carne just means meat. So caro here, this is just general meat, and then we'll kind of learn some of the different types of meat that the ancient Romans would have eaten. So caro is feminine. And then we have bubula. Bubula is going to be our Latin word for beef. Now, we learned the word vaca for cow. So bubula is more beef. So this is used more for referring to the beef once it's been cooked. Now, beef was not super common or popular in ancient Rome. It was much more common in ancient Greece. Like I said, cows were much more populous in Greece, more so than in Rome. The Romans actually liked a lot more game animals, and as we will see, fish and things like that. So beef was not super common or popular in ancient Rome, but they did have it. So bubula was going to be their word for beef. Now, this was one of the more common types of meat they would eat in ancient Rome, piscis. Piscis is a masculine noun. This is our Latin word for fish. So Rome, right, especially, it's right on the Tiber River, which connects to the Mediterranean Sea. So a lot of the Roman Empire was around the Mediterranean Sea, so lots of access to seafood. Seafood in general is very common, very popular. So fish, very, very common meat for them to eat in ancient Rome. Glis. Glis is a masculine word. This is one of the more interesting types of meats they would have eaten. This is our word for a dormouse. Now, fried dormice were actually considered a bit of a delicacy for the ancient Romans. So again, meal that they love that we might kind of think a little bit odd nowadays, but fried dormice, very, very popular in ancient Rome. And glis is going to be our word for a dormouse. And then another kind of one on the more exotic side, we have pavo. Pavo is a masculine noun. This is our Latin word for a peacock. And this was another sort of bit of a delicacy. It was, so typically the peacock would be cooked and then they would use the feathers to kind of decorate the cooked peacock. This was something that might have been served at maybe some of those wealthier family dinner parties as a way of impressing their guests. They also had things there's recipe books where they ate like flamingo. They had a lot of really interesting exotic foods that they would try and cook and eat. So that is all of our vocab for today. Obviously, there's a lot more types of food that they ate. And I'll come up with kind of a list of a few bonus food items that you can use for your menu project if you want. If there's something that you want to add on your menu project that I did not give you a word for, you're welcome to email me and ask. Again, keep in mind that they don't necessarily have all the same foods in ancient Rome as we do nowadays today, right? Because there's certain types of animals and plants and vegetables and fruits that are native to parts of the world that the Romans didn't have access to. So things like turkey, right? Thanksgiving's coming up and turkey is kind of the main meal for us. They didn't have turkeys in ancient Rome. Turkeys are native to North America. And the Romans did not know about North America. They didn't have access to North America. So they didn't eat turkeys in ancient Rome. So peacocks, they did have chicken. So we did learn the word for chicken in our animal vocab. So we had pollus for chicken. And then pig, right, porcos. They did have pigs as well. I didn't include those in this slide because we've technically already learned those words. But those are some options for food items, technically, right? Because chicken and pigs were eaten as well. So you can also use those in there as well. All right, make sure you check out the video talking about your project. Again, it's going to be over the course of a few weeks going after Thanksgiving as well. So for this week, you're just kind of working on getting your rough draft done, your menu items done. So check out that video. Let me know if you have any questions. I'll post the slides to this separately so that you can get the words down on your own instead of trying to rush it down as you watch the video. But anyways, enjoy working on your food project. Let me know if you have any questions and I will see you next time. Wale te discipline.